All right, so who am I? Just as always, my name's Joe. I've been with Enable for a little over 5 years now. I have worked in most of the account management and education roles that are customer facing inside our company, or inside my company, I guess I should say. Everything from the channel sales or account manager position to sales engineer to partner success to head nerd. Very happy to be here today. Well, today we're going to take the basics that we learned yesterday and we are going to quickly move forward with them. So we've got a couple items that we're going to talk about. We've got a couple labs that we are going to do today. So if you have not downloaded the lab manual, you will find it inside the handouts section. Right? That lab manual is going to walk us through most of what we're going to do today. Now, lab manual's process and steps is going to be a little bit different than what I am going to do live for you folks. So think of the live items as being steps 1 and 2. The lab is going to take you through steps 1 more advanced and 2 more advanced. So we will look at doing some command line items, look at working with our machines through the terminal. Okay, we'll go through some quick automation options. I'm actually super excited about the automation part of this. We have a wicked good onboarding script to take a look at today. We'll create some packages and download the software needed to do that. And then we'll take a look, or sorry, we don't need software for packages. It is the profiles we will get some software for. And we'll look at a couple other items that we will see. So before diving into the fun of today, we're going to take a quick little recap of yesterday, just so we are all starting at the same spot. Right? So we talked a good bit about our managing Macs, right? Going from onboarding all the way through to troubleshooting. Okay. We talked a lot about comparing them to Windows devices, hence the theory behind this particular webinar. And I think, at least for our managing purposes and what we are going to be doing inside these boot camps, that it's really not Mac versus Windows. It is two very similar paths, just the Windows way and the Mac way that we're going to be dealing with it, right? The good example that one of my old coworkers gave was it's kind of like US English versus UK English. They are completely different sounding, but let's be honest, they are incredibly similar, right? We might call it a trunk, UK might call it a boot, but it's the same darn thing. Okay. Next up, we'll recap real quickly. Okay, some of the terminology that we went through. What we'll really focus on is not so much the glossary itself, but these 6 items here, as we are going to be dealing with them a lot in our scripting today. We've got MDM, or mobile device management, the overriding management platform for Macs. Okay, We've got for our old school Mac nerds, the DEP, or Device Enrollment Program, that has now become Apple Business Manager. This gives us control over our devices to utilize the Apple push notification service to start deploying profiles and packages that control our TCC and PPPC payloads, right? The settings that say, yes, this application may access this thing, right? We're going to quickly gloss over our glossary items. They are in the handout. Please just go and grab it. Okay, I don't want to sit here and bore you folks with definitions. We are not in a second grade spelling bee. But things that do need to be pointed out here will be the bottom two items on this page. I know I stressed it a lot yesterday, but for those of you who weren't there, or for those of you who may be a little bit newer to Macs, please remember drives have full names. They are not individual letters. So we have volumes Macintosh HD instead of drive C. We'll also remember that the forward uh, 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 slash is a real thing. Backslash equals Windows, forward slash equals Macs, and what we're going to be dealing with today. This does become relevant as we will be scripting a lot, and if you're anything like me, halfway through a script, you slip back into old habits, script doesn't work, and you start scratching your head. So let's do be aware. All right, so we're going to delve right in off the bat here and start taking a look at what has been dubbed our command line kung fu, right? And we sit here for so long in today's demo, and we're going to do a good amount here because Mac is a Linux-based OS. It is built on top of a BSD-derived or Unix OS, excuse me, not Linux, Unix OS called Darwin. Right? If you're familiar with Linux, a lot of stuff is interchangeable, but Linux is not Unix. Okay, that was my mistake. We need to be aware of that. Not everything is transferable. However, the two environments are going to work very similar in that you can pretty much do everything from the command line. Everything can be text-based. Keeps it nice, keeps it neat, keeps it clean. Right? There's macOS has a variety of shells to choose from built in. Okay, and this is mainly for backwards compatibility with scripts or commands written for older systems. Okay, one of those nice things that Apple's done to make things simple and has kept it simple. We're very happy for that. So when we look at the shells available, you'll have the default shell of, well, shell. We've got CSH, Born Again, and Shell Bash. We also have the newest shell, which is ZSH or Z shell. To tie back into US versus UK English, Z shell, I believe, across the pond. And even though most of the Mac users that we are going to be dealing with, their machines probably have never touched the terminal, you as a Mac admin, get used to living here. It is the best, or well, one of the most efficient ways to do a lot of the work we need to do on Macs that can or cannot be automated. So a lot of time looking at text today. Get geared up. So looking at our command lines, okay, or looking at our commands themselves, we're going to start every command with a prompt. So we will always see that $sign. When we are in our terminal, oops, which I think I have to open, you will note that every line is going to begin with the $sign. Okay. After the $sign, you will note we have our base first command. Base commands are going to be lowercase words or acronyms that are going to give some basic items here. So in this particular case, we are looking at the ls command, and the ls command is, oh, let's open terminal, please. Thank you. Sorry, I'm yelling at my Mac while talking to you folks. Um, the ls command here is for file listing, right? Or if it helps you folks in your heads, think about list stuff, okay? Outside of that, we're going to have some options. Okay, these options are going to take that command, give it a little bit of flavor. In this particular case, the -L, and then documents are actual parameters. So if we look at this is going to be list files from the documents folder. The little squiggly line / is a nice shortcut that means home folder, so please get used to seeing that one a good amount. All right, so when we put something into our command line or our command prompt, we are going to get outputs. We will get outputs we would like. We would get outputs we do not like or do not want, in which case we are going to look at our redirection commands here. Okay, so we first off have our pipe, which just means we're going to bring in another process. Quick, simple, and easy peasy. Then we have our greater than angle bracket with the small side to the right uh, symbol, whatever we would like to call this. And this is our redirect, okay? Um, or our standard output to file item. The double bracket's going to be appending rather than replacing. So coming in, taking that first output, we're taking that first target and appending any information there. STD error or STDIR, stir, however we say this, our little 2 greater than symbol is going to send only errors. Right? This is generally used when we need to look at the errors a program's generating rather than every single one of the outputs. If the program or the app or the service or whatever we're monitoring is running fine, we don't really care to get that information. If there is an error, we care to get that information, and our 2 greater than symbol is going to be our bread and butter there. And why a 2? Because there's also a descriptor of 1, which is implied in the standard or the std out redirects. So 2 needed to be used. Okay, last thing we have our less than symbol or our little alligator mouth pointing with the small side to the left. Okay, and this is going to be our std in or standard in. Its descriptor is always 0 because you always start counting at 0, but I don't think that item is truly something we're going to have to focus on, but some nice basic commands. All right, so what can we do with these commands? I'm going to post a quick link here inside the chat for you folks to get some more information on these basics, okay, so that you have this, and we are going to start looking at what we can do with these commands. So think about something that we can't monitor directly. So a nice example of this would be EDR status for standalone, right? We cannot monitor that directly inside N-central or uh, uh, inside RMM. So that would be a great item for us to start looking and pulling from the log file, taking that information and parsing it out, right? Something we could do on the command line. All right, so the other thing we can take a look at doing is using these commands or using some more advanced commands to start getting to the point where we're going to write our own shell scripts that can take those monitors, right? Is EDR running? If it's not, look for the daemons that may not be running and let's get them up and going, okay? This is going to be the most fast and flexible way to do a lot of our troubleshooting and to do a lot of our monitoring. So taking this knowledge and pumping it into Insight RMM or in Central is going to be quite valuable. On top of that, uh, even if you can't script, Google can be your friend. Get to the point where you can at least read what you are dealing with and copy and paste. I am by no means a shell expert, right? But as long as you can Google well, let's not reinvent the wheel, folks. Let's look at taking advantage of what others have done before us, because let's be honest, you are never going to be the first. So let's take a quick look at our commands and what we can do here. So let's make this a little bit bigger so everyone can see. And we're going to take a look down here at the bottom. All right, so we're going to start fresh. What agent are we going to need inside and central? Your End Central version should be at the 22 or 2022.7 or higher. The agent version off the top of my head, I believe is like 1.2.0.98. I believe is the most current Mac agent out there, if I'm not mistaken. And then he brings up the point of both are not working with take control. Which is quite common. Do make sure that you have the appropriate permissions on that Mac in place to be able to utilize take control. There is a profile inside the uh, uh, MSP cookbook or the automation cookbook inside the Success Center. So again, success.enable.com. On that top toolbar in the resources section, you will see the automation cookbook. Inside the automation cookbook, you will see about 20 profiles for Macs. And those should give you the ability to affect change on the privacy and the security section here. And you will notice there are things like privacy and security for screen recording. I believe disk access is one item that we're looking at. Files and folders is an item that we're looking at giving access to take control to, and that profile can simply be pushed directly through ADM. If those settings are in place, the profile has been pushed either manually or through Apple device management. Please, Alex, get with support. We will want to take a look at that. All right. So quickly coming back to our command line. So we're going to start with a very simple ls command space L, and we are going to look at the files and folders on our desktop. So I hit enter, and quite quickly we now see our list of stuff from my desktop. We see my bootcamps and labs folders, and then we see some Visual Studio items and a simple text file here. Now we can dig a little bit further down uh, uh, into our system here, and let's see if we can go to our text file. So we will come back, issue the same command, coming to desktop. If I could type today, bear with me. Apparently, coffee is necessary to type in my life. Who would have thought? Next up, we'll put our little alligator symbol, and we will try to open text.txt. Come in, hit enter. We'll notice that we do not have quite the access we want, so we can come to open text.txt, and oh, we looks like I messed up a little bit here. Let's give this another shot. So let's go ls test. No. Desktop. There we go. We see our desktop. ls space now. hyphen desktop t, enter, there we go, open text.txt. There. And I don't know why it's saying it doesn't exist, but that is a new one. We'll clear that and we'll move forward. For some reason, it does not want to pull open that read-only file, even though it should be able to. Well, my apologies there. I don't know what's going on. Let's move forward. So we'll complete that action. We should have seen the text file open. There is something going on with my commands. I don't know if I'm just mistyping and not getting there, but my apologies. So should have opened that text file simply from my desktop, but pretty easy, pretty simple. We could look at troubleshooting, but not quite worth it for us right now. What we are more worried about right now is the automation side of everything. Okay, so coming in and at least seeing that we could do a lot remotely here, we do have the ability to SSH into these machines to send these particular commands, or we could take control or remote background into these devices to start working with scheduled tasks as we need. So in looking at automation and what we're going to be dealing with inside our lab, yeah, and Alex is right. I could CD desktop, then do cat text, and it would probably open. Um, Anywho, top automation requests that we've seen have been install third-party apps, either through an installer or something along those lines. We'll talk about Installamator. We did talk about it yesterday as well. The other item we see is the ability to rename computers on mass and then reboot on uptime. Right? These first three items are incredibly common in Macs and are incredibly useful, especially inside Insight's RMM. I change the name of Mac devices with partners all the time. So we will see these items inside the cookbook and we will want to take a look at them. So coming in to the cookbook here, we will search for Installamator, and we will see we have Mac deployment for Installamator, we have install packages, and we have a removal script if you would like. Okay, so some good scripts there. We can also search quite quickly for the rename. Oops, and again, typing today. Should be here. There we go. Mac, set host name, computer name, net BIOS, the whole 9 yards. Okay, and then the reboot, of course, we can find as well. Now, the other item that we look at getting a lot of requests for that we are going to be working with today is our onboarding setup. We're going to have a onboarding script that we will be working with today, and we will send out the link to that in just 1 second. If you would like to get to the cookbook, take a quick screenshot of this QR code or just save the URL. All right, so first off, what we are going to look at doing here is we are going to look at installing Homebrew, which is one of the pieces of software that we will use quite extensively when it comes to uh, 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 installing software. Uh, Installamator is a good one. Homebrew is a nice one as well. Okay, give you the link to Homebrew here inside the chat. We, however, are going to use our terminal to download it. So we can come directly to our terminal and we can pull our script. Come into our terminal here. If you don't uh, see, you can pull from right here. Just hit copy, right? And if you don't want to manually enter it, you have the ability to just copy and paste directly from the website itself. Now, I'm going to be installing over an existing version of this. So when I come in, oops, need to run as sudo, oops, wrong password. There we go. And there is a little bit of interaction here in that we'll have to press enter to go and work with some of our options that we can edit as necessary, but we'll get this script or this particular command line prompt to download the and install Homebrew for us. Okay. So Homebrew being one option here, the other option that we have, which I will again post the link to inside the chat, is going to be Installamator. Installamator or Homebrew either way, I think both of them are very, very good, but Installamator, rather than going via command line, we will go to the GitHub Installamator releases. We will come down to the 9.2, which is the latest version. Scroll down here and you'll be able to pull the package. So we can download, we can open, oops, let's get this out of the way, and our installer will pop up. So come in, click continue, click install, and then use your password or Touch ID for the installation to complete. Both of these will be used, or one of them at least will be used in our script that we are going to take a look at in just a second. Okay. As we remember as well, we have the ability to install directly from the cookbook with our two Installamator scripts. All right, so after we get those items installed, oops, should not have put down Chrome, we are going to go back to Chrome and we are going to take a look at the meat of today's first lab. Again, going into the chat. All right. We put together this just massive onboarding script here that we're going to be working with. What we're going to do for this first lab, we're going to have about 5 to 10 minutes, and we are going to take a look at what our script here can do for us. So, couple quick things that we are going to take a look at. First off, everything that has a pound sign in front of it, okay, is going to be considered not running. So when we're going through this script after downloading it, the pound sign equals comment, which means it does not run. So as we look at this, we're going to see a description of everything in this script in each individual section, and then a script itself. So for instance, here, caffeinate makes sure the computer doesn't go to sleep while this script is running. That is very nice to have up and going. And then what we can do is go through each individual portion of this. Part 2, let's use Installamator here to start looking for a list of apps that we would like to quickly install. If we have questions as to what Installamator can or cannot pull, you'll notice in the GitHub page, there's a list of about 550-ish odd pieces of software that Installamator can work with. We get our basic configure section, setting the computer name, coming in and setting host name, localhost, and the like. Okay, we'll notice that the default command section here is just extensive. This is by far the longest portion of this script, and as we go through, we'll hopefully get through a good amount of it today, but we take a look at coming in and quite quickly going through, and if we don't want a portion of this script, we can simply navigate to that portion of the script, enter a pound sign to disable it, and move forward. Or if you want to clean as you move, you know something will never enter your onboarding process, just take it out of the script. Wholesale delete that particular section and that particular portion of the script. Okay, so just a large amount of information and settings that we can affect very, very quickly with our script here. We will at the end throw out any errors that may be found when running the script. So do keep in mind, we will have a nice simple report out of this. Okay, so we've got our content and we will take this and put it into whatever text editor we tend to appreciate to make our shell files. And we will look at moving forward. All right, so we're going to take a look at packages and installers here in this next little portion. And we're going to look at doing a lot of this via command line again. So what we're going to do in this particular uh, demo here is we are going to look at creating a no payload installer with our post install script or our onboarding script. So the item that we just went through, the item that we just parsed through, saw what we can do. We're taking a look at the pluses of that monstrous script there. We're going to take this, we're going to put it into a PKG, and then we will be able to run that PKG file. So we're going to take the text version of that script and we are going to do uh, uh, or take that text file and we are going to or script file and create that package. Sorry, my apologies. Now, we are going to do this completely text-based through our terminal. That is not to say in this particular case that this is the easiest way to do it or this particular behavior. I have found that there are benefits to some of the graphical interfaces that create package installers, though typically they're going to be more complicated PKG files than what we're creating. Because let's be honest, ours is really just going to include a script, right? There is not much to that, okay? But if we are going to be looking at a build that's going to be much more complicated, we have graphical apps that you can build PKG files with. I don't tend to do that in my life. I do tend to focus on the graphical version. So I will stick with the terminal. Um, I don't have much in the way of suggestions for which package builder we have. Okay, so we will go to man pkg build here, and we will get our manual for our pkg build tool, right? And our uh, uh, lab here that we're going to look at completing. So we come in, we have a basic description of what we are doing, what we are building, and what we are delivering, right? Where we're going to deliver it. So some basic variables that we may need here, right? We are focusing on no payload, which is going to indicate that our script does not, or that our PKG does not contain a payload. It is only scripts themselves. And then, of course, we're also going to have to take a look at where that script is going to go or that PKG is going to be put, where it's coming from, a basic identifier, which is going to be a unique name for that particular package, and how we are going to push it through. So a lot of information inside this particular script or this particular section. All right. We will talk about signing packages and apps in a bit, but not something that we will deal with right now. So let's come out of here. Let's close that out and let's go back to our terminal. We'll come back here. We will come here and we're going to look at creating our package now. So the command we are going to use, I'll quickly put in the chat should you want to follow along outside of the lab while I am doing this, if you would like. So we have our script here. So first things first, we need to get our unique identifier. So we will come in and we are going to go sudo because of course we're going to run this as a super user. If we are not aware, sudo is super user do. So of course you'll need your admin passwords. Then we'll put in our unique identifier that is going to go in reverse DNS fashion. So we will call our identifier com.enable.mac onboarding, okay, or Mac Nerd, whatever we are going to call this. We'll then have our no payload identifier saying that we are going to be looking at putting scripts in here. Okay, now, excuse me, when we look at creating this PKG, okay, we are going to need the path we are pulling from. So I will pull up my Finder here, and I am going to pull my folder and pop it right here. Oops, should have hit space here. My apologies. There we go. All right, so this is where the script is coming from. All right, and then we will put the path to. Um, okay, so where do we want this item going to and being stored? Okay, so again, back to Finder, and this time I just want to pop it inside my boot camps and labs folder. So let's go back up to desktop. Let's go to boot camps and labs, and we will pull my folder. Hit enter. We will enter in our password, and we will create that PKG. Now, when we create this PKG file here, we can double click on this item, okay? Or we can look at using the sudo installer command pkg dash pkj or pkg name, and then the target of where to put it as we would like. So Okay, and we get our outputs here. We get our PKG in the proper spot. All right. Uh, I'm not going to run that particular script on my device because I don't have a lot of the necessary permissions for that script to properly execute because Enable controls my device more than I do for obvious reasons. They like they are the owners of the device. One, two, they control my Apple Business Manager ID. They want me to be a little bit less powerful than them. We'll talk about a couple items that lead us down into how Macs truly organize their drives. And then we'll look at interacting with that just a smidge via profiles. So first off, we'll start with app signing, which we may or may not have heard of on Macs. What is it and why may we want this particular capability? So to be able to sign apps, you have to be a part of the Apple Developer Program. Okay, I believe it's still $99 dollars per year. Um, but what it allows you to do is register your applications or your scripts or your automation with Apple itself so that you are a known identity, so that you don't start getting pop ups that say, hey, do you trust this vendor or this entity that you would see on a Windows or Mac device for that matter when you say download an installer from online. Um, or download a application online. That pop-up comes up. Hey, do you want to run the installer? Yes, this is from a trusted source. Signing the app pretty much makes you the trusted source. Okay, when we look at signing apps, this is definitely something that we can do via command line. And what our command would look like in this particular instance, if we are signing something, is we will have the sign command that we could put in and put our developer ID in that particular command. So it gives us great control. It gives us simple and easy access to set ourselves up as a trusted Apple entity, and definitely something that I would take a look at if we are specifically looking at building some of our own custom apps, if we are looking at doing extensive amounts of scripts or creating those PKG files. Typically, our larger MSPs are all going to have at least one person part of the developer program. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Apple does kind of look the other way. If you have one person as a developer, as long as everybody uses that Apple ID to sign, they don't tend to fret too much about it, at least in my experience. If you're the first person to get caught with that I know of, I would love to hear about it. Typically, our smaller MSPs tend to shy away from this as it's not something they quite are dealing with on a regular basis, but definitely something we should know is out there as a program. Okay. Excuse me, folks. All right, this leads us to why is signing necessary? Well, we have system integrity protection from Apple, or SIP for short. Okay. Oops, excuse me. So, what SIP is pretty much that gatekeeper. Again, those pop-ups that we can get around on our Apple devices. Now, what SIP does for us inside the real world, outside of signing these apps, is it gives us the uh, 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 protections that we'll need inside our hard drive to be able to be unable to interact with certain items. So this brings us to, not only does it help protect us from unauthenticated apps and whatnot, it also prevents us or installers from messing with stuff that they shouldn't, which also leads us to things like Cove data protection being unable to do a full system backup. Okay, because on a Mac, sudo can do everything it wants until it can't. And we'll take a little bit of a deeper dive into this in just a second, right? But what we'll look at is rootless items. So we will come back to our command prompt here. We will type in the command ls-l. We will go library, and we're going to look at updates. So we'll get a list of our updates here. Okay, and we see a couple denotations to be aware of. First off, root. Okay, that means we do still have the ability to uh, interact with these items unless something else is denoted, and we see that here with product metadata dot plist. This tells us we cannot interact with that particular file. We will also see a rootless denotation doing that as well. So moving in to find more information about what we're looking at here inside the library, we can come do LA as our command here to pull more information on these particular files. So let's go library /updates. Here we found a couple other files. We're still seeing our product metadata plist, but to get all the way down to as much information as we can pull on the updates inside our library, we will finally add the @ symbol here, updates, up, and of course I mistype. So let's go ls-la, shift @ no shift, because again, it is apparently too early in the morning for typing. All right, here now we see our full bit of information. So we see our rootless denotation on this particular file. Here we see our product metadata telling us that these items are unable to be interacted with, okay, in any fashion. So we take this information, we look that we, even as admin, don't have the ability to interact with these items. We now start to understand why a bare metal recovery through Cove data protection, or any of our competitors for that matter, is nigh impossible. If you do have a vendor telling you they can do bare metal recovery on a Mac, I would love to see it work live on a modern Mac, or the vendor's stuck in 2012 and they're doing this on much older OSs. Okay, so this leads us to our Apple file uh, system. Let's quickly come back here, bear with me, and our Apple file system. So looking at those files we can and cannot interact with on our drive. So we've got APFS, not to be confused with AFS, which stands for a couple other items. APFS is our Apple file system, right? And it's more than just a file system. It is also a protection item. So we'll see our specific containers here, starting with our entire physical disk, going down into the Apple protection or Apple file system. Okay, what we see more commonly with this is going to be a system of containers where certain items are protected by SIP, right? Bringing us back to those items that may be labeled product metadata or rootless. So here we have a, for instance, of what my device looks like. I've got a single physical disk, the SSD, then I've got my uh, containers of disk 1 with some free space that I can use however I would like. But inside that disk 1, we'll see the Macintosh HD denotation. That is our OS. That is all of our product. That is all of Apple, our Apple's stuff. Okay, and you'll see down at the bottom it's protected by SIP. Now, outside of that, unprotected by SIP, we have snapshots. Okay, and again, these are going to be more difficult to interact with, but not impossible, but still very difficult to interact with, because what these snapshots are is snapshots of our OS as we update that OS. So we can restore back to one of these, but we have to do that through Apple because that restore requires use of the SIP protected Microsoft HD container. Okay, so uh, Microsoft or not Microsoft, Macintosh HD SIP protected container. My apologies. Okay, the third container that we see here is our disk 1 S2 section that is going to control the Macintosh HD data. This is everything that we can interact with uh, by and large. Right, this is what's going to control our users. So we'll see volume, Macintosh HD data, users on the device, and this is where we can look at starting to say backup things or interact with that particular set of data. So what we see inside our device, if we are actually going to want to look at this, is we can pull up the disk utility tool directly from the Finder or System Preferences. And what we see here is just a basic overview of our drive. So we're going to start off at the physical disk section, the SSD denotation of those list of containers. Here we see I've got 500 gig that I can play around with. The next section that we will see coming down is our container disk. So this brings us to one, how much are we using? What is our denotations? So we see our VM, that's a little Windows server running. We see our Macintosh HD data, so the interactable files that we can deal with. And then we see our Macintosh HD section in blue telling us, hey, there is that portion we are unable to interact with. So this is the container for all of the individual volumes. Okay, coming down, we will note that we're now looking at the Macintosh HD section, which is where the OS and applications associated with the OS reside. This whole volume is protected, and you'll note, of course, it is completely separate from the user data. Okay, you'll note the mount point. Okay, system volumes update mount 1. Right. The next volume is going to be the snapshot of the volume here. We will note the mount point looks blank as it is just a snapshot. It's what we're working off of, but the actual OS is the truly mounted item. Okay, we'll notice that we are on Mac OS 11.6.6 here, and we see this here. Now, another denotation, Apple file system has encrypted this particular section as well as our snapshot. Okay, so SIP protected, unable to be interacted with. Okay, and this snapshot, of course, does tell us the last update. Next, we're going to see the largest of the bits, or the largest of the bits we're looking at with the Macintosh HD container, where we see we're at just about 295 gig here. This is where your user data is going to live. So here we'll see the mount point of system/volumes/data. Okay, so when we come in to say our terminal, we can view that data. Where did my mouse go? All right, let's just, there we are. We're going to exit out here, come to our terminal real quick so we can see what we're dealing with. We're going to CD, and then we will look up list stuff, LA, C users folder, and we can see our users. Okay, so quick and easy way. So what this also shows us as a heads up is what we are able to back up and what we are able to restore. All right, so quickly coming back to our presentation and looking at moving forward. So moving into profiles away from that little bit of protected data and that file structure, we're going to take a look at what we can do with profiles, and we'll take a look at our last lab today and how we can interact with said profiles. Okay, so um, you can create a profile inside the command prompt or the terminal if you would like. Anything you could do on a Mac, you could do on the command line. However, when it comes to setting up profiles, we are going to look at a tool called iMazing. All right. And the way we're going to think of these particular profiles is very similar to how we think about group policy on our Windows devices. Profiles most commonly used, as we've talked about recently, to affect those TCC and other security settings and deliver those PPPC payloads, right? Affecting the security settings. So say something like RMM take control can function properly for us. But that's not all that they do. Those are just the simple uh, uh, items that we can deal with. So we see these down at the bottom. Okay, of course, we can interact with certificates, okay, either downloading or creating as necessary. We can look at deploying apps through profiles, either through third party or Apple themselves. Okay, remember, like we talked about yesterday, the App Store is a very, very, very good tool. We've got the VPP program that we can be a part of to look at deploying apps en masse. However, of course, the App Store doesn't have everything inside it. And we talked about the fact that Apple sometimes neuters some of the software inside the App Store because of their security recommendations and requirements. So sometimes the third party applications are very much needed. We also can look at pushing these profiles to any of the listed OSs up top. So the automation here, when we look at building a profile, is just exceptional. Okay, so we are going to take a look at iMazing. I am a fan of iMazing. I very much like this tool. I put a link inside the chat for you to grab the tool itself should you need it. And I am going to open it here. All right, we are going to bring our iMazing tool up to the top. So part of the lab today will be downloading the iMazing tool, okay, so that you guys can interact with it and utilize it. For this particular section, you will want this tool. So we'll download it from the proper URL, the one I put in the chat. We'll open the DMG, right? So remember, we think of these like ISOs from Windows from yesterday. This is the drag and drop install. You'll see the graphical representation of iMazing. Drag it across the window into your apps folder. Once it's been copied to that folder, the window will or the app will install, and we will now be here inside the general section. So inside iMazing, what we are going to do first is make our profile. Very inventive with the name here. We're going to call this sample desktop profile. Okay, we get a unique identifier that you can uh, uh, edit as you would need. We'll leave this as the generated one for now, but get again inventive here. Have some type of naming convention as part of your SOP that will suffice to make these profiles very easy to denote. Okay. Coming down, you can enter any description items for the organization itself, uh, any profile signing, so the ability to sign as necessary. Okay, what are we going to do with user interaction? So we can come in and say prevent end users from removing this profile, or come in and say you have to have a removal passcode, or it's going to be removed on an individual date. Okay, the whole 9 yards. We can control payload scope, where does it get put, and we can target the OS as well, or device type as well. So very, very nice here. All right. On the left-hand side, we get our individual uh, 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 building blocks of our profiles that we can look at interacting with. Scrolling through, getting a feel for what's here is quite nice. You do have the ability to click on an item and add that configuration payload. You'll see where you can add that particular payload as you go through, and if there are any version issues or any version requirements, you'll be able to see them here. Up at the top, we can filter by OS as necessary to make our lives easier for us. And we have a nice little search as we would need. Okay, so what we are going to look at doing is we are going to create a very simple profile that looks at desktop picture settings. So we're going to come in, we will add our configuration payload. We see our particular OS denotations that we may need to be dealing with. All right, and we'll be able to choose a path of the particular picture that we are going to be turning into our background item. So, yay. Enter in the appropriate path. I'm going to copy and I shall paste. Okay, or drag and drop your image or your file path here, the image icon here, and we're going to say we're going to lock this as the desktop picture. Okay, we will then save, so file, save that profile to a section or a area of our choosing. I am going to put it inside my bootcamp scripts in section and come in, save that particular profile. The lab's going to have you call it lab3.mobileconfig. Okay. Now, to test this profile on your Mac, we can uh, minimize iMazing, okay, come to where that profile is. So let's go back to come here, we see our config file, and if you right click, you'll see open with, and we have our profile installer app. Okay, this will prompt you to open system preferences, and you will see the icon for profiles. Click on that, and our new profile installer should appear. So coming in, where did my pop-up go? Let's see if we can't find it. I think I have just too much up and it is a little bit lost. But you should be able to quickly and easily get to it. Okay. Once you click install from that little symbol, okay, uh, uh, you'll see that once you click the profile symbol, it's a nice little check mark that looks like a bolt or a sun, if you will. That install will happen, and you'll see your uh, JPEG uh, download as necessary, or change the background as necessary. We just created our profile through iMazing and looked at doing the good old double click. What we are going to quickly take a look at right now is if I was using in Central RMM or our Insight RMM, how would I be interacting with this profile? And what could I do with it using those tools to, sorry folks, uh, to excuse me, push those profiles remotely, because the double click version that we saw in the lab is quite nice. Now, we're going to look at this in the RMM, okay, but we will quickly take a look in it at, and we will quickly take a look at it in Central as well. Don't worry. So we'll come to settings. We will come to device management for Apple. Inside here, we will be able to upload our profiles as necessary from our, let's go down to scripts, sample desk profile. We can open profile, name it. We can load it into the RMM, and then under profile deployment, select our devices. Again, we'll see a list of devices. Checkbox is going down the left-hand side. Select, choose the profile, deploy. Simple, easy peasy. We'll go ahead and we will delete that profile. Inside and Central, bear with me as I get logged in, we're going to see very similar setup, but this time we are going to be at the system level. So please note system. And we will go to configuration, and then from there we can load our profile in the same fashion. That's what you get for typing in the wrong numbers there, folks. 1 second. Haha. All right, so coming in to N-Central, we see system level. We then see configuration. We see ADM. We see our push certificates here that I didn't go over inside the RMM. We see our profile library and our upload. So quick, simple, and easy remote deploy. All right. Next up, we are going to look at performance tuning, and we're going to look at some basic troubleshooting items that we can go through, and we'll look again at some items that we will use as we are troubleshooting. Okay, so first off, what we are going to do is we are going to play with a fun little command inside most Macs, and that will just be a yes in the command prompt. And now our command prompt is going haywire, or our terminal is going haywire. So where we can take a look at this and what's going on, we'll start with our activity monitor. And here we will look at all processes, and we will clear our search. So here we see our terminal is now using uh, over 100% of our CPU, or one of our CPUs and a little bit of another, right? It is taxing this quite hard. We can double click on the item to learn more about this. What is its parent process? What are the statistics? What open files and ports do we have inside this particular item? Then to interact with this item, we can come up here to our X, quit, and force quit as necessary. We will force quit in this instance, uh, killing the terminal and that nasty yes process. Okay, so some good quick information that we can get in here. Okay, looking at what we can do, what we can kill. All right, and we'll notice our CPU load has drastically dropped. Still a couple spikes. We can say thank you to go to meeting here. All right. In that same vein, when we are looking for performance issues, or are we looking for why something is possibly taxing our machine very difficult or very hard, we have our console. Here, what we are most looking for is our crash reports. Here we see install Visual Studio. I had a crash a couple days ago, and we see some basic information on that. Then we have our spin report. Unfortunately, I tried to force a spin. I couldn't get it to happen. What a spin is, when that little beach ball symbol pops up and the rainbow colors spin around your mouse, uh, kind of like, hey, I'm doing something here with the Mac. We can pull reports and see here as well. You'll also note inside the log reports, we have a nice little search function where we can come in and say, look at pulling our install logs as necessary. Everything that's used that install uh, event as we are looking through. All right, nice ways to filter. We can come in and look at all messages or errors and defaults as necessary, okay, and get some quick information on our devices. Right, so we'll go ahead and we will minimize there. So some quick troubleshooting items, but also items that we'll look at when we're seeing any type of performance errors or performance issues on our machines. We'll quickly come to that location. If you do need to get in contact with me, joseph.ferla@enable.com for email. If that doesn't work, you can always ask your PSM to contact me or include me in an email thread if needed. You can also reach me on Twitter, HeadNerdJoe. Though Twitter, probably not the best way to get in touch with me. You can also find me on LinkedIn at Joe Ferla. Alrighty, folks. I will talk to you guys later. And again, it has been a pleasure.